In the presence of the light of God, I would like to ask the question, who is it that wanders in samsara? As we posit this question, we arise immediately at a paradox. If only God exists, who is it that suffers? What is its cause? What is its source? Here in this place, in this time, we can feel the presence of God with such intensity, such clarity. So vivid. And with that we say, what joy, what mercy. From the standpoint of God, who would most certainly say, I alone exist. And we, in all hope, swift to take succor, as we fall into our entire life, would hopefully agree. And then in the very next breath we go, what the hell is that? Oh, that's pain. That's suffering. Where did this come from? We know ourselves to be God, and thus we arise in our entire life. And in an instant, simplicity is gone. Complication, difficulty, confusion, fear. Well, what has happened? The simple explanation, the explanation of myth, is that God, out of whim, and a desire to know and experience himself, created the universe. Out of himself, without the slightest displacement, stain, or diminishment. The idea of a kind of contraction of self, a reflex. In an instant, on a whim, the creation comes into being. Remember, a whim is a form of action without cause. It has no intention. It has no purpose. If it had intention, it would be an intention. It wouldn't be a whim. If it had a purpose, it would be a purpose. It would not be a whim. A whim is something that happens for no reason. There isn't even a reason for the lack of reason. But we can see in some kind of logic that the creation somehow reflects the nature of God. It's certainly not evident on its surface. It always takes some looking into the matter. especially here in this world, 13 of 25, where on one hand you see beauty, you see love, you see the divine presence, and in the same glance you see injustice, you see agony, you see suffering. Side by side. There's no clear route. But the creation, the entire creation, universes of universes, still a bit vast. Let's bring the scope of our discussion down, make it more personal. That we ourselves, having been created by and of God, totally expressing the nature of God, and that every experience, it follows that any one piece of the creation is as much God as the creation itself. And this gives us the opportunity to introduce a very important idea, and that is I. The idea of conscious existence, conscious experience. The dynamic of perception. To be. To witness. And to participate in the entire panoply of the creation, personally. And thus we now have the position that the I consciousness, that by which we know ourselves, is indeed of the nature of God. But it is taken on the aspect of the creation. Perhaps we can imagine the vast presence of empty consciousness, oceanic, that which we call God. And the single dot on the spot, that is I. That the I is the contraction of that. Our experience of the I consciousness we know to be a reflex of separation. It is something that we lovingly have come to call the ego. That reflex that separates and defines our existence as separate from its surroundings. And so that, of course, gives us another situation. If the ego is a contraction of God, that infinite consciousness contracting into the creation, and out of that microcosm of that infinitely vast creation, the individual I. Exist as separate. We have, by definition, generated a third category, and that is that, or you. I, you. It's an important idea that the ocean of consciousness is the expansion of the contracted essence of I, the creation. And the contracted I is the contracted aspect of the infinite expanse of the ocean of consciousness. We can follow that. But then we very swiftly have a third category. It's of the nature of separation of the ego. The idea of contraction, God being pure consciousness, beyond quality, and I being pure consciousness, defined by quality. Sets a wave of cause and effect in motion, having contracted once, and the dynamic of Maya, that force that gives name and title to all formation, having identified I, doesn't just stop there. It subdivides again. And voila, we have you. We see this idea of contraction as a kind of moving down the ladder of phylogeny from infinite consciousness, God, into infinite diversity. Moving from vibration into formation, being constantly divided and subdivided and subdivided. Until very quickly, the original impulse of the contraction between infinite consciousness of God and the creation itself is lost and forgotten. And we begin to become driven down corridor after corridor of the chain of subdivision of I and you. Thus we see the beginning of this idea of cause and effect, infinite formless consciousness. Out of whim contracts, generates the creation. The creation is an effect of the original cause. Momentum of the original cause doesn't stop in the first assumption of name and form of I, but continues to subdivide and becomes you, I and you.